In a small forgotten village, surrounded by hills and silence, there is a forest the people do not name after sunset. They say it has a hunger that stirs when the last rays of light fade, when the sky bruises into black, and when even the dogs whimper at the threshold of their homes. The villagers whisper, "Step beyond the trees at night, and you will not return." They speak of voices that do not belong to the living, of paths that bend back on themselves, of shadows that breathe like animals, watching, waiting. Children are raised on warnings. Travelers are told to pass before dusk or risk being swallowed whole. Yet, every tale, every whispered story, has one thing in common. No one has ever walked back out after the sun has gone. The forest keeps what it takes, boys. But this is not a story of what the villagers feared. This is the story of one boy who chose to enter when all others turned away. He did not seek glory. He did not seek riches. He sought something far more dangerous, hope. On the edge of that forest, as the day faded, he stood alone. Behind him, a mother's life slipping away. Ahead of him, a wall of darkness that seemed to breathe. And when he stepped forward, the forest woke. But the forest's hunger had been growing long before that night. Far from the world of kings and roads, hidden between mountains that trap the cold wind, there lies a village that time forgot. The fields there are thin, the soil stubborn, and every winter feels like a punishment. The people live not by wealth, not by trade, but by endurance. When fever or sickness strikes, there are no doctors, no travelers bearing remedies. Instead, they turn to the land itself, to roots, leaves, and bitter herbs hidden in the wild. And of all these, there is one plant, rare, pale as moonlight, growing only where the forest presses deepest. It is said to cool the blood, to drive out sickness. But it grows where no sane soul dares to tread when the sun is gone. In one hut at the edge of this weary village, a boy kept watch over his mother. He was no older than 14, with hands calloused not from play, but from work. His father had vanished seasons ago, claimed either by the forest or the road, no one knew. His mother was all he had left. And now she lay burning with fever, her breath shallow, her voice little more than a whisper. The villagers came, as they always did, not with remedies but with warnings. One old woman, her back bent like a broken branch, said, "The forest has already marked her, child. To step inside is to offer yourself to its hunger." Another spat into the dirt and muttered that the forest kept count, and would claim anyone foolish enough to disturb its night. The boy listened. But every cough his mother gave was like a hand tightening around his chest. Every time her eyes fluttered open, searching for him in her fever, he felt the seconds slipping away. He asked for help, for someone braver, stronger, but the villagers turned their faces. None would cross that line. Not after dusk. Not when the forest fed. And so he sat, alone in the dim glow of a dying fire, staring out at the trees that loomed beyond the fields. Their shapes twisted in the half-light, branches like ribs, shadows like mouths. Beyond them waited the herb, the only hope. The night crept closer. The sky blackened. And as the last light bled from the world, the boy rose. He did not speak. He did not wait. He stepped toward the place everyone else had fled from their entire lives. The villagers watched from their doorways, silent, afraid to even whisper his name, as though the forest itself might hear and claim them too. And with that single step past the boundary, the boy entered a story no one believed could be told. He crossed the boundary at nightfall. At first, it felt no different than stepping into any other thicket, the crunch of leaves, the cool bite of evening air. But then the silence began. It did not fall all at once. It unraveled slowly, like a cloth being pulled apart. First the crickets stopped. Then the last call of a nightbird choked off mid-song. Even the wind, which had chased him across the open fields, seemed to hesitate at the tree line, unwilling to follow him further. The boy's breath grew loud in his own ears. Every step echoed as though the forest floor itself were hollow, listening. He carried a small lantern, its flame trembling against the draft that whispered through the trees. That faint light painted the bark in shades of bone, and for the first time he felt the forest was not merely watching. It was waiting. He thought of his mother's face, damp with fever, her lips too dry to speak. The image pressed him forward, step by step. Yet the deeper he went, the heavier the air became, thick, damp, clinging to his skin like unseen hands. Then came the first sound. A voice. Faint. A whisper. It brushed against his ear, though no mouth was near enough to shape the words. Turn back. He froze. His lantern shook. He turned, expecting to see a villager who had followed. But behind him lay only shadows, layered upon shadows. The path he had taken already looked different, narrower, swallowed by the dark. He pressed on. The whispers followed. Sometimes they came from behind, sometimes from the branches above. Sometimes they carried the tone of his mother, calling his name in a weak, pleading voice. Come home. His heart pounded, but he did not turn. From the corner of his eyes, shapes moved, quick, darting figures that vanished the moment he faced them. At first, he told himself they were animals. But no animal moves like smoke. No animal waits at the edge of sight, shifting but never fully seen. The forest twisted around him. The branches, gnarled and black against the pale light of his lantern, began to resemble fingers, crooked, reaching, brushing his shoulders as though they tried to draw him deeper. Once, one branch snagged his sleeve. For a heartbeat it did not feel like wood. It felt warm. Like skin. The boy's chest tightened. He wanted to run. Every story the villagers had told clawed its way into his mind. Men swallowed whole. Women who screamed but were never heard again. Children who followed voices and vanished like sparks in the night. But then he thought again of his mother. Her hand in his, fragile as a bird's wing. Her eyes begging without words for relief. He clenched his jaw, gripped the lantern tighter, and whispered aloud, not to the forest, but to himself, I must go on. And with that he forced his legs forward. One step, then another. The whispers swelled, angry now, desperate, echoing through the trees like a crowd closing in. But the boy, though trembling, did not turn back. He was inside the hungry forest, and the forest knew it. And it would not let him leave without a fight. The deeper he went, the more the forest spoke. At first, it was only whispers, half-formed words curling through the branches. But now, the voices sharpened. They carried shape, memory, familiarity. He heard his mother again, not weak and fevered, but clear, pleading, Come back to me, my son. Don't leave me here to die alone. The boy stopped dead in his tracks. His hands trembled, and the lantern's light wavered. The voice was hers. It was her. The same gentle tone that once sang him to sleep, the same voice that told him stories when the winters stretched too long. It came not from behind, not from ahead, but from everywhere. Then another joined it. His father's voice. A voice he had not heard in years. It is not too late, boy. Come back, before it takes you too. His knees weakened. The air felt heavier, pressing against his chest. Behind him, a sound broke the silence. Footsteps. Slow, deliberate, crushing leaves with the weight of someone who followed close. The boy spun, raising his lantern high, but the flames sputtered, coughing shadows across the trees. No one stood there. No shape, no figure. Only darkness thicker than before. Then came laughter. Low, cruel, too human to be wind, too twisted to belong to anything else. The lantern flickered violently, dimming until the world was swallowed in near darkness. The boy's heart thrashed in his chest. For a single, terrifying moment, he believed the flame would vanish completely. And if it did, he knew, without reason, without question, that he would never see the edge of the forest again. "Turn back," the voices cried. "Turn back before it eats you." He clenched the lantern to his chest, shielding it with his body as the flame shrank to a trembling ember. The shadows bent closer, shapes shifting just beyond sight, stretching long, too long, as if reaching for him. His breath came ragged. His legs begged to flee. He thought of running, out, anywhere, away from the suffocating black. For an instant he nearly gave in. He imagined himself bursting through the tree line, collapsing into the dirt of the village, alive, safe, never to return. But then he saw her. Not in the forest, not among the shadows, but in his mind. His mother, pale and fading, her lips trembling with unspoken pain. Her hand, fragile and searching, waiting for him to bring hope. That image gripped him harder than fear ever could. He straightened, holding the lantern high though its flame was faint. His lips whispered a vow meant for no one but himself. "I will not stop. Not until I find it." And with that he stepped forward. One foot, then the other. The voices screamed louder, clawing at his ears, filling the air with promises of death, of despair, of endless darkness. But he pressed on. The forest, it seemed, had grown angry. And the night had only begun. But the voices were only the beginning. The forest had deeper hunger still. As he pressed forward, the ground shifted beneath him. Roots thick as serpents twisted up from the soil, snaring his ankles. He stumbled, the lantern swinging wildly, shadows lurching across the bark like demons awakened. He pulled, he kicked, but the roots only tightened, alive, writhing as though the earth itself sought to claim him. The whispers changed. They grew sharper, cruel. Faces began to form in the dark, hollow-eyed, bone-thin, the shapes of those who had entered before him and never returned. Some still bore the clothing of villagers long dead, their mouths stretched in silent screams. Their eyes glowed faint, pale, as though pleading for release, but their hands reached for him instead. One figure drifted close, its skull half bare, its voice rasping, "Join us." The boy cried out, wrenching his leg free just as the roots snapped back into the ground. His chest heaved, fear like fire in his veins. Then he saw her. His mother. Not the fevered woman who lay waiting in their hut, but whole, alive, standing among the trees. She looked at him with soft eyes, arms open. "Come back to me, my son," she said. Her voice was warm, filled with comfort. For a fleeting moment he wanted to believe, to run into her arms, to collapse against her chest and be safe. But deep inside, something twisted. Her smile was too wide, her eyes too dark, and when she stepped forward, her shadow bent the wrong way. He staggered back, clutching the lantern as though it were his last breath. "You are not her," he whispered. The figure's face melted, collapsing into smoke before his eyes, leaving nothing but the forest's hollow laughter ringing in his ears. Tears blurred his vision, but still he walked. His lips moved in prayer, not to gods, not to saints, but to the faint memory of courage that still burned inside him. His steps were small, trembling, but they carried him on. And then, suddenly, the forest parted. He stumbled into a clearing. The air shifted. The voices fell silent as though struck dumb. Before him, in the heart of the darkness, grew a single plant. Its leaves were pale, almost silver, glimmering as though touched by moonlight though no moon pierced the canopy above. The herb, the very cure his mother needed. The boy dropped to his knees, hands trembling as he reached out and tore it from the soil. For the first time, his chest filled not with fear, but with hope. He clutched the plant to his chest, proof that he had endured, that he had defied the forest itself. But the silence did not last. The moment the roots broke, the ground shuddered. The trees groaned, twisting, bending inward. The air ripped open with a sound that was not mere wind, but a roar, deep, ancient, furious. The forest itself screamed. The boy staggered to his feet. He had what he came for. But now, he had to escape. And as he turned back into the suffocating dark, the hungry forest closed its jaws. He ran. Branches clawed at his arms, roots lunged for his feet, shadows swarmed at the edges of his sight. The whispers no longer begged him to turn back. They screamed. They cursed, shrieked, howled his name with voices not meant for human throats. Some shouted like angry villagers, others wailed like grieving mothers, but all chased him deeper into the dark. The lantern's flame fought to live, shrinking with every breath of wind, every grasping shadow that sought to swallow it whole. Yet still he clutched it, one hand gripping the herb tight against his chest. Each step felt stolen, each gasp scraped his throat raw, but he would not stop. Not now. Behind him, the roar rose again. It rolled through the trees like thunder, shaking the very earth. The forest was alive, furious, collapsing in on itself as though it meant to bury him where he stood. But ahead, faint, almost forgotten, was a sliver of light. The boy staggered toward it, his legs heavy, his breath breaking. The air thinned, the voices shrieked louder, more desperate, as if the forest itself feared losing its prey. He felt claws at his back, teeth at his heels, yet when the first line of gold split the horizon, everything changed. The shadows recoiled. The voices cracked into silence. The trees groaned like wounded beasts and stilled. What had been a prison of endless night began to unravel, its power breaking under the weight of morning. With a final, trembling step, the boy stumbled through the last line of trees. He fell to his knees, dirt grinding into his palms, lungs burning. The herb was still clutched against his chest, unbroken, untouched. And then, there was quiet. True quiet. Not the suffocating silence of the forest, but the stillness of dawn, the breath of the world returning. From the village, doors creaked open. Eyes widened. For generations, no one had ever seen such a sight. A living soul stepping out of the hungry forest after nightfall. Some gasped. Others crossed themselves. A few wept. The boy could not rise. His body was too weak, too battered. But his hands still held the herb. And that alone told the story. He had gone in where none dared tread. He had returned where none ever had. The first to walk back from the hungry forest alive. The boy did not remember how they carried him home. He did not remember the hushed voices, or the way the villagers stared as though he were a ghost returned from the grave. What he remembered was laying the herb in his mother's hand. They brewed it into a bitter tea, drop by drop, feeding it past her lips. And for the first time in many nights, her fever broke. Her breath steadied. Color returned to her cheeks. Her eyes opened, not clouded by sickness, but clear, and she saw her son, broken and weary, yet alive. The village changed that day. For years, their lives had been chained by fear, their nights ruled by the story of a forest that ate all who dared step inside. But now, they had seen proof that not even the darkest myth could stand against a heart unwilling to yield. They whispered of him as the boy who walked through the hungry forest and came back with life in his hands. Some called him blessed. Others said the forest would never forgive him. But none could deny what they saw. Persistence had done what fear never could. And so the tale passed from mouth to mouth, fire to fire, growing into legend. Not a tale of the forest's hunger, but of a boy's courage. Because fear is loud. It claws, it screams, It shakes the walls of the heart. But in the end, fear is only an echo. It cannot touch the soul that refuses to stop. True persistence, born of love, born of purpose, can silence even the darkest voices. Yet still, on certain nights, when the wind twists through the trees, the villagers swear they hear the forest whisper. A low voice, bitter, patient, waiting. A reminder that fear never dies. But courage, if you dare to hold it, is stronger.